He called himself Ragnar Lothbrok, a name whispered in fear. His grotesque videos captivated and horrified millions. Ragnar's followers believed in his twisted ideology, celebrating his brutality. But even gods can bleed. The authorities finally exposed his true identity and brought him to justice. The raid was swift and brutal. Ragnar was found in his basement, surrounded by his tools of terror. He didn't resist, simply smiled. His capture spread like wildfire, but his message continued to spread. His videos, now relics, were shared and reshared, keeping his influence alive. Ragnar's death ignited a firestorm among his followers, making things much worse. Among Ragnar's followers was Erik, a quiet young man who believed in Ragnar's message. Erik saw Ragnar's death as a beginning and believed he was the one to carry the torch. He transformed himself, adopting Ragnar's appearance and demeanor. Erik was gone. The new Ragnar Lothbrok had arrived. Erik created a new YouTube channel calling it Ragnar Lothbrok. His first video, simple yet chilling, announced Ragnar's death and the continuation of his work. He promised to avenge Ragnar's death and show the world the true meaning of fear. The video ended with a chilling promise: "Long live Ragnar Lothbrok." The internet buzzed with the news of Ragnar's return. His second video, a tour of his Viking-themed basement, was both mesmerizing and terrifying. He called it his sanctuary, where he communed with Ragnar's spirit and planned his next move. The viewers, both curious and converted, were transfixed by the sheer strangeness of it all. He ran his hand along the stone wall, tracing ancient runes. He explained that he built this sanctuary himself, an offering to his god. He showed the sacred relics of Ragnar Lothbrok, including a worn leather-bound book and a wooden mask. Holding the mask, he whispered that it was Ragnar's mask of power, now his. The viewers watched in horrified fascination. He picked up Ragnar's journal, explaining it contained Ragnar's thoughts, plans, and prophecies. Ragnar knew he would be betrayed, but also knew his work would not end with his death. He turned to the camera, declaring Ragnar left him a message to finish what he started and avenge his death. The viewers held their breath as the new Ragnar revealed his plan. He announced a list of names, those who conspired against Ragnar and must pay. Holding a piece of paper, he declared it their death warrant. One by one, he vowed to hunt them down and make them pay for their sins. The video ended, and a digital firestorm ensued. The authorities, concerned about a copycat, knew they had to act fast. Meanwhile, Erik, pleased with the video's success, read through the comments, savoring the fear. He was no longer just Erik, he was Ragnar Lothbrok with a purpose and a mission. The new Ragnar began gathering information on his targets: politicians, journalists, and law enforcement officials. He moved like a phantom, using VPNs and burner accounts, always one step ahead of the authorities. The people on his list, oblivious to the danger, went about their lives, believing the nightmare was over. The new Ragnar was patient, waiting for the perfect moment to exact his revenge. Erik reveled in the anonymity the internet provided, a ghost in the digital crowd. He knew the ins and outs of the dark web, acquiring anything he needed with a few clicks. The authorities were powerless to stop him, a ghost in the machine. He watched his targets, studying their every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. The first name on the list was a journalist who had exposed the original Ragnar. He began by sending her cryptic messages and hacking her social media, breaking her down piece by piece. The journalist, realizing the danger, went to the police, but they were powerless to help. The new Ragnar watched her descent into paranoia, enjoying her fear, waiting to cut the strings when the time was right. Section 5. The First Offering. The journalist's body was found in her apartment. The official cause of death was a heart attack, but the circumstances were unusual. A single white rose was placed on her pillow. The new Ragnar allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. The first offering had been made. The first soul had been sacrificed on the altar of revenge. Fear. It was a tangible thing now. A dark cloud hanging over the city, the nation, the world. The journalist's death, ruled inconclusive, sparked a frenzy of speculation. Conspiracy theories ran rampant online. Was it foul play? Was there a cover-up? The authorities, tight-lipped and evasive, only fueled the flames of paranoia. The new Ragnar watched the chaos unfold with cold amusement. He was the architect of this fear, the conductor of this macabre symphony. He reveled in the knowledge that he, and he alone, held the strings. The world was his stage, and he was about to deliver one hell of a performance. He had chosen his next target, a high-ranking police official, instrumental in the raid that brought down the original Ragnar Lothbrok. He was a man of power, accustomed to being in control. The new Ragnar planned to strip him of that control piece by piece. He would make him understand what it meant to be powerless, to be hunted. The game was afoot. The hunter stalked his prey, his presence felt but never seen. The serpent slithered in the shadows, its venomous fangs poised to strike. The world held its breath, bracing for the next blow. The police official, a man named Detective Miller, was a seasoned veteran. He had seen his fair share of darkness, but something about this case chilled him to the bone. The journalist's death, the lack of evidence, the unsettling feeling of being watched, it all pointed to something beyond his experience, something insidious and evil. He threw himself into the investigation, determined to find answers. He spent countless hours poring over the journalist's files, her notes, her emails, searching for any clue, any lead that might lead him to her killer. But the deeper he dug, the more he realized he was dealing with something truly extraordinary. The killer was a ghost, a phantom operating in the digital ether. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, no witnesses, just a trail of digital breadcrumbs, carefully placed to taunt and mislead. It was like chasing a shadow, a whisper in the wind. Miller, a man of logic and reason, found himself questioning his sanity. Was he losing his edge? Was he seeing things that weren't there? Or was there something truly evil at play, something that defied explanation? The new Ragnar began his psychological torture slowly, subtly. He started by leaving cryptic messages on Detective Miller's personal devices, messages that only he would understand. He hacked into police databases, leaving false leads, planting seeds of doubt in the minds of Miller's colleagues. He escalated his campaign of terror, sending Miller anonymous packages, a dead rat, a vial of blood, a photograph of Miller's family with their faces crossed out. Each package was a hammer blow to Miller's psyche, chipping away at his resolve, driving him closer to the edge. The once steadfast detective became withdrawn, haunted. He started seeing shadows, hearing whispers. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, followed, hunted. His world, once ordered and predictable, had become a waking nightmare. The new Ragnar, observing Miller's descent into madness, felt a surge of grim satisfaction. He was breaking the detective, just as he had broken the journalist. He was proving that no one, not even the guardians of law and order, was safe from his reach. The pressure on Detective Miller mounted. The media, sensing a scandal, hounded him relentlessly. His superiors, their confidence shaken, began to doubt his judgment. He was a man alone, trapped in a web of his own making, desperately searching for a way out. He became obsessed with catching the new Ragnar, sacrificing sleep, relationships, even his own well-being in pursuit of his quarry. He knew that if he didn't stop this madman, more innocent lives would be lost. He was their only hope, but the new Ragnar was always one step ahead, a phantom in the digital labyrinth. He used Miller's obsession against him, leading him on a wild goose chase, a deadly game of cat and mouse. Miller, his mind frayed, his body exhausted, was starting to crack. The new Ragnar's psychological torture was taking its toll. He was losing his grip on reality, the line between hunter and hunted blurring with every passing day. The new Ragnar struck on a night like any other. The city slept, oblivious to the horror unfolding in its midst. Detective Miller, lured to a deserted warehouse by a false lead, found himself facing an empty room. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of water from a leaky pipe. He felt a chill run down his spine. He had walked into a trap. He spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his gun, but it was too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, a dark silhouette against the moonlit window. The new Ragnar. He stood there, calm and collected, a single white rose clutched in his gloved hand. "Hello, detective," he said, his voice a low, menacing purr. "We've been expecting you." Miller, his heart pounding in his chest, raised his gun, but his hand trembled. "It's over, Miller," the new Ragnar said, his voice laced with amusement. "You can't stop what's coming." He dropped the rose to the floor. It landed with a soft thud, the sound echoing in the vast emptiness of the warehouse. It was the last thing Detective Miller saw before the darkness consumed him. The warehouse stood silent, empty. The only sign of the struggle, a single white rose, lay crushed on the cold concrete floor. Detective Miller was gone, vanished. Another victim claimed by the digital phantom, the new Ragnar Lothbrok. News of Miller's disappearance spread like wildfire. The media, fueled by the insatiable hunger for sensation, went into overdrive. The authorities, faced with mounting public pressure, launched a full-scale investigation, but it was a futile effort. Chasing the new Ragnar was like chasing smoke. He was a ghost, a whisper, a nightmare you couldn't wake up from. Eric, the man behind the mask, the new harbinger of chaos, watched it all unfold from the safety of his digital fortress. He felt no remorse, no guilt, only a cold, detached satisfaction. He was fulfilling his purpose. He was avenging his fallen god. Each life he claimed, a sacrifice on the altar of Ragnar Lothbrok. His work, however, was far from over. The list, a testament to his devotion, held more names, more souls to reap, more offerings to be made. The world, cowering in fear, had yet to witness the true extent of his devotion. The reign of the new Ragnar Lothbrok had just begun. The killings continued, each one meticulously planned, each one a gruesome spectacle designed to instill fear and uncertainty. The new Ragnar, a master of the digital domain, used the internet as his weapon, his stage, his hunting ground. He was everywhere and nowhere, a digital phantom haunting the collective consciousness of the world. He taunted the authorities with cryptic messages, leaving clues that were as much taunts as they were warnings. He hacked into news broadcasts, interrupting the regular programming with his own twisted messages. He even managed to manipulate social media algorithms, ensuring that his message of fear and chaos reached every corner of the internet. The world watched in horrified fascination. The new Ragnar, once a shadowy figure lurking in the darkest corners of the web, had become a global phenomenon. His name, whispered in fear and awe, was on everyone's lips. He had become the embodiment of digital terror, a chilling reminder that in the age of information, no one was safe. The authorities, despite their best efforts, seemed powerless to stop him. They were always one step behind, always reacting, never anticipating. The new Ragnar was playing them like a fiddle, and he was enjoying every minute of it. As the body count rose, so did the fear. People became afraid to speak out, afraid to draw attention to themselves. The new Ragnar's message, a potent blend of paranoia and nihilism, began to take root in the fertile ground of fear. The authorities, desperate to regain control of the narrative, doubled down on their efforts. They launched massive surveillance programs, monitored online activity with unprecedented scrutiny, and cracked down on any form of dissent. But their actions, fueled by fear and desperation, only served to erode public trust. The new Ragnar, a master manipulator, used this to his advantage. He planted seeds of doubt, whispering that the authorities were behind it all, that they were using the fear to consolidate their power. And slowly, insidiously, people began to believe him. The line between truth and fiction, reality and nightmare became increasingly blurred. The world, once familiar and safe, had become a breeding ground for paranoia and suspicion. The new Ragnar, the architect of this chaos, had achieved his goal. He had plunged the world into darkness, and he was reveling in the shadows. The killings stopped as abruptly as they had begun. The new Ragnar, his mission of vengeance complete, disappeared from the digital landscape. The world, holding its breath, waited for the other shoe to drop. The authorities launched a massive manhunt. They were determined to bring the new Ragnar to justice, but their efforts proved futile. He had vanished without a trace. The fear remained. The new Ragnar's reign of terror left an indelible mark on the world's psyche. The internet had become a breeding ground for fear and extremism, and then a new video surfaced online. A dark figure in a Viking helmet standing before a burning pyre. The caption read, "Ragnar Lothbrok is dead. Long live Ragnar Lothbrok." The legacy of Ragnar Lothbrok lived on. The mantle awaited a new champion. In the darkest corners of the internet, countless others were watching, waiting, listening. The cycle was about to begin anew. Days turned into weeks. Weeks bled into months. The city held its breath. The silence was the calm before a storm. Then he resurfaced. In the harsh light of reality, he walked into a police station, head held high. His face, once hidden, now visible. He was calm, didn't resist arrest, handed the officer a single white rose. The news sent shockwaves across the globe. He confessed to everything, declared himself an instrument of a higher power. The debt had been paid. The trial was a media circus. The world, still reeling from the new Ragnar's reign of terror, tuned in, desperate for answers, for closure. But the trial, far from providing clarity, only deepened the mystery. Eric, now a figure of morbid fascination, sat in the courtroom, a ghost in the machine brought to life. He showed no remorse, no regret. He spoke of his crimes with a chilling matter-of-factness, his voice devoid of emotion. He was, in his own words, merely a vessel, a tool wielded by a force far greater than himself. The psychiatrists were baffled. His sanity was questioned, debated, dissected, but no one could agree on a diagnosis. Was he truly mad? Or was this an elaborate act, a performance designed to manipulate and terrify? The lines between delusion and reality, between fanaticism and calculated evil, became increasingly blurred. And as the trial progressed, a chilling realization dawned on the world. The new Ragnar Lothbrok may have been behind bars, but the ideology that fueled his rampage, the seductive poison of fear and chaos, was still out there. The seeds of madness, sown in the fertile ground of the internet, had taken root, and there was nothing to stop them from spreading. The internet, once hailed as a tool for connection and progress, now seemed like a breeding ground for something far more sinister. The new Ragnar Lothbrok was not an anomaly. He was a symptom of a much larger disease, a disease that thrived in the anonymity of the digital world. A disease that fed on fear, isolation, and despair. In the aftermath of the trial, copycat channels began to appear online. New Ragnar Lothbroks, each more extreme than the last, emerged from the shadows, all vying for the mantle of the fallen god. They preached a gospel of violence and chaos, their words resonating with a disaffected and disillusioned generation. The authorities, struggling to contain the digital hydra, found themselves fighting a losing battle. Every head they severed, two more seemed to grow in its place. The internet, once a force for good, had become a Pandora's box, unleashing a torrent of darkness upon the world. And at the heart of it all, in the digital void where it all began, the spirit of the original Ragnar Lothbrok seemed to linger, a malevolent presence, feeding on the fear and the chaos, growing stronger with each passing day. Eric, the man who dared to become the new Ragnar Lothbrok, was sentenced to life in prison. He disappeared from the public eye, a ghost returning to the shadows. But his legacy, the legacy of fear and chaos he unleashed upon the world, lived on. The internet, once a playground of possibilities, now seemed like a dark forest full of unseen dangers lurking in the shadows. The new Ragnar Lothbrok may have been stopped, but the question that haunted the world was this: How many more like him were out there waiting for their moment to strike? How many more lost souls, seduced by the siren song of extremism, were ready to take up the mantle of the fallen god? The answer, chillingly, was impossible to know. The internet, for all its wonders, had also become a mirror reflecting the darkest impulses of humanity back at itself. And in that reflection, the world saw a terrifying truth. The monsters were not confined to the shadows. They were among us, and they were just getting started. The legacy of fear, once unleashed, could never be fully contained. It would continue to spread like a virus, infecting the digital bloodstream, reminding the world that in the age of information, the greatest threat often came from within.